This is the Jerusalem Post Zoomcast, JPost one-on-one.
Welcome everyone to the Jerusalem Post Zoomcast. I'm Rossella Tercatin, archaeology reporter at the Jerusalem Post, and we are here with Professor Yuval Gadot. Professor Yuval Gadot is the head of the Jacob Elko Department of Archaeology and Ancient Near Eastern Cultures at Tel-Aviv University, as well as the co-director of the Tel-Aviv University Israel Antiquities Authority excavation at the City of David. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So today we're going to talk about exciting developments in the understanding of the archaeology of Jerusalem and surrounding, ahead of a conference that is going to take place on October 6th and 7th, devoted to new developments in archaeology in Jerusalem and surrounding. The conference is going to be held at the Menachem Begin Heritage Center and is organized by Tel Aviv University, Hebrew University of Jerusalem, the Israel Antiquities Authority, as well as other partners. So,
Yep.
Professor Gadot, you were telling me that in the past few years, new discoveries have sort of like opened up our understanding of how we look at archaeology in Jerusalem and surrounding, and what the city looked like around 2,500, 2,600 years ago. So can you tell me a little bit about, if we were talking sort of like 5 years ago, what we would be looking at in the landscape, the archaeological sites, what would we understood?
Yes, if we even speak without archaeology, if we open up the biblical text, we read about Hezekiah rebelling against the Assyrians somewhere at 701 BCE. We then learn that his son is taking over after him. We learn that he wins the war against the Assyrians, and then his son is coming up after him. And then it's quiet. You don't really hear much. And then comes Josiah, the next in line. And Josiah is described as the greatest king ever after David. He's really coming back to the book of Deuteronomy and so on. And then come the trouble of the last years. So this is what, like, there's a gap there of 60 or 70 years that were mostly ruled by Menashe, and we hear very little about, and also the years after 701 that Hezekiah continued to rule from Jerusalem, but he kind of was in a treaty with the Assyrians, and we hear very little about what he does in those days. And this is kind of a mystery, because archaeologically, even before the turn that I'm going to talk about, from 1960, from let's say 1970, when the Jewish quarter excavations discovered what we call the extended wall surrounding Jerusalem from the days of Hezekiah, probably, it was clear that Jerusalem is reaching its highest. The area that is built is the largest ever. Shiloh's excavations found a lot of wealth in the houses that were destroyed in 586, but Jerusalem and the archaeology were really not trying to pull in data on these lost 60 or 70 years. It was understood that Jerusalem is the capital of Judah and is enjoying prosperity, and that was that. Even when there were excavations at Ramat Rachel, which is something like 6 or 7 kilometers south of Jerusalem, and Yochanan Aharoni excavated there in the 1960s, and he found the palace. It was immediately connected with these kings of Judah and seen as kind of an isolated winter palace or summer palace that they built themselves on the summit, but it wasn't really nobody tried to evaluate how come and why are the kings so strong that they are able to do that. And whenever there was suggestion who built it, it was immediately associated with the kings that are portrayed as the heroes in the biblical text. Hezekiah on the one hand, or Joachim close to the end, and so on. In what I think is coming out in the last 6 years, 5 years, but it's it's accumulating and accumulating, and it created a kind of a turning point. Is the fact that Jerusalem is a major capital city, really webbed, completely connected to the Assyrian Empire, the Assyrian way of ruling over space. I don't think that there is a specific Assyrian governor sitting at all the places that I'm going to describe in a minute, but I see the people who are sitting there as completely webbed and into this imperial worldview. And Jerusalem is enjoying a tremendous moment, simply or not simply, because it knows how to play, or the leaders know how to play the world game, political game, and to enjoy the custody of the Assyrians, and at the same time to enjoy prosperity.
So let's see if that's what we're looking at. So we know that the Assyrian conquest is also mentioned in the biblical text. We know the biblical text give us some hints at the relationship between the kings of Judah and the Assyrian conquest, but not too much. And we just have, as you were mentioning, this few decades of gap without specific reference in the biblical text.
If there's anything referenced, it's that the Menashe is the biggest sinner ever, and none of his actions are described. Just the fact that he's ruling over more than 50 years. Okay? This is a very stable king who is ruling for many, many years, but he's getting credit for nothing except for being a big sinner.
Except for being a big sinner. And what we are starting to see, what we have been seeing from the field, is that the role of Jerusalem and its prosperity was even more and more impressive than what we thought. So what do we see? What have we found in the field that has been giving us this new perspective?
Okay. I'll go with the way the things were found, like how the mystery is being unfolded. Oded Lifshitz and I was a kind of an area a site supervisor in the excavations at Ramat Rachel, starting 2000 and I think it was 2005. We came already with the view that Ramat Rachel is an isolated palace, but it's not connected directly to the kings of Judah. It's more a residency connected to a collection of tax and so on, relating to the Assyrians. So this is like an intermediate tax collecting center and the palace that is standing between Judah and Jerusalem as the kingdom, as the capital of the kingdom, and then the Assyrians all around. So it's like if you want to imagine the British mandate governor residency just outside of Jerusalem, which is closer to the Ramat Rachel, and we all the time thought, why didn't they build this palace closer to Jerusalem? Why are they so far away? And everybody thought, as far as we knew, that there's really nothing in between. You have Jerusalem and its walls, surrounding also Mount Zion and so on, and then 5 kilometers of area that is really uninhabited, and then you come to Ramat Rachel and you have this palace. And we connected the palace to the lands over Nachal Refaim, the agricultural landscape, and so on. But we suggested that it has to be seen in light of the rule of the Assyrians. It's not disconnected from them. Then came the excavations at Arnona. Arnona, the excavations are just by the American embassy, and these are excavations by Neria Sapir and Natan Ben Ari from the Israeli Antiquity Authority, and in an area that nobody really thought that there is something. They saw, like already before the excavation, that there's a huge pile of stones there, but their excavations exposed layers below and layers above of monumental buildings, all dating between the 8th century and let's say the more monumental phases are ending at 586 or maybe a little bit before. And the amount of handles that had stamp impressions, this is a habit that we know from somewhere. This is the Lifshitz specialties. taxes were collected in store jars, and these store jars were stamped with stamp impressions that are indicating that the content of the jar belongs to the kinghood. Okay, and so there is a stamp impression that says Lamelech, belonging to the king, and then they evolved over time. And usually you find these places in the central places of the kingdom, but the amount of handles like that, that means that there were store jars there, that were found at Arnona, the excavations. Places Arnona high in the numbers, like you have Jerusalem, Lachish, the two well-established centers that we know of, Ramat Rachel, and then comes Arnona. Okay, and this was an unknown place, and the use of ashtar stones, and the fact that it's sitting in a very kind of a viewed place over the Kidron, tributaries of the Kidron going down towards the east. All of this convinced the excavators there, and there I think they're going to present it in the conference. We'll hear exactly how they present it, that this place is a station that is collecting also tax in a period that is predating the consolidation of power at Ramat Rachel. Ramat Rachel has its stages, and we know of a very big difference between stage 1 and stage 2, and they relate all of the stages that they just described to the first moment of Ramat Rachel, when Ramat Rachel wasn't as strong. And now we know that there's another station or tax collecting place sitting in the landscape, overviewing the small valleys surrounding. And this is a very powerful place, and you'll be able to see. And so it began to fill in the gap between Ramat Rachel and Jerusalem. And while they were working, works that were done by Elad at the Schatz house. The Schatz building is a house or building, is located on the pomegranate overlooking the city of David, just by the British Mandate Palace, what is today the UN Governor Palace. And there accidentally stumbled on things that became that it was clear that it's archaeology. And the Israeli Antiquity Authority stepped in. Yaakov Billing conducted salvage excavations. There at Arnona, you see the architecture and you have the content through the stamping on the jars. At this place at Armon HaNatziv, almost nothing survived archaeologically, but the amount of decorated stones capitals and decorated window balustrades and so on, things that were known from Ramat Rachel, mainly from Yochanan Aharoni's excavations. These are incredible collection of mainly the capitals, stone capitals, unknown from anywhere else in their size, and their style is unique. Mainly their size is, they're smaller than usual. Made everybody understand that the chance finds are sometimes more important than, I want to go and excavate in the city of David because I hope to find 1 and 2 or 3. From all of the excavations at the city of David, until now we know of 3 fragments of such capitals, stone capitals. One was found by Kenyon, and then Elat Mazar found one, and Doron Ben Ami found one, and together with Yana Chechanovich. And now, I don't remember exactly the number, but it's above 10, I think, if I remember correctly, that were found at Armon HaNatziv. And it means that there was a building there, that the decoration was incredible. And it was standing, when I guide tours, usually to the city of David, students, other people, I always go first to this pomegranate, to the Sherover, the Armon HaNatziv, Tayelet, Armon HaNatziv. And we stand there, and you say to them, you see, this is Temple Mount, and look to your right, you see the Kidron River, and to the left, you see the Gei Ben Hinnom, and you understand what the city of David is. You have a very good image of the topography and the layout of this place. And suddenly we realized that somebody, and this somebody I think is Menashe, is building it's not a house, it's a pergola. Sounds like something we built today in your courtyard, but it's a decorated pergola. In a minute I'll say what was built around it, what was done around it, overlooking Temple Mount, and it has to be royal. And we have to imagine, maybe this is what I think, King Menashe sitting there hosting the Assyrian governor from somewhere and telling him, okay, do you want to drink of wine and so on? And they're sitting and they're overlooking this crazy, crazy, crazy city of Jerusalem at that time. And both Arnona and Aron Hatziv, they both disappear completely from the landscape. Somewhere close to 586, or maybe even before, they are wiped out erased from the landscape, and consequently also erased from our memory. And we don't know anything about it. And the style over there is so Assyrian. This is not something that was existing here in the old, let's say, Canaanite or Israelite Judah kingdoms. The landscape wasn't part of the way you express your power. Landscape was something you use in order to get food or something like that. And suddenly we see these expressions of power, of elite wealth, simply by building monumental buildings on places that are seen. Just not what you see, it's also who sees you when you speak about these places. And this is what I meant by bringing the Assyrian way of ruling into Judah.
So if we imagine looking at Jerusalem and its surrounding by them, because when we speak about Jerusalem in the period, we refer to what more or less is the contemporary old city. We nowadays even Ramat Rachel, which in modern times is a kibbutz on the outskirts of the southern part of the city, but still within the city. Back then, we said they were separated. So we see Temple Mount and its immediate surrounding, and what today is the city of David, as Jerusalem. And then we see a series of important monumental palaces with used for administrative purpose, maybe for living purpose. Is that correct? What if we imagine describe?
Yeah, palaces is a little bit big word, because it's like we all imagine Versailles or Buckingham Palace, right, like large complexes. At Armon Hatziv, at least from the excavations that were, and this is a chance find, you never know what disappeared under the road there. It looks like more like a single building, meant at hosting political figures. I'm trying to think of a modern equivalent. I don't have this exactly in my mind, but it's not, I don't think anybody lived there physically over the years. And I don't want to make too many spoilers to the conference, but there were examinations for pollen. Pollen is what is the flowers are producing when they are in the trees, and it flies in the wind. And the pollen, it survives, and it can tell us about the vegetation around, and there are big surprises. So,
very interesting.
So it's not completely isolated, but it's not built around. Arnona seems more like a very practical place, but still with the aura of using stones that are ashlar stones that were cut and specifically and so on, and its location is very dramatic. And I think also so is Ramat Rachel in this stage. We know very little about Ramat Rachel in the early stage, except for the hundreds of Lamelech stamp impressions and so on. And Ramat Rachel is over, while Arnona is looking a little bit to the east, Ramat Rachel is seen from everywhere where you go to the west, the southwest. If you stand at Gilo, if you stand at Teddy Stadium, if you stand at anywhere along Nahal Refaim, in the built area, the Rehov Emek Refaim today, the street of Emek Refaim, you see Ramat Rachel. So whatever was built there was seen by everyone. So it's the same language. I don't know if there were people actually living there at that moment. And altogether, if I can add also things that were found a little bit before, at Walaje, the Israel Antiquity Authority, Daniel and Mo, they found a stone capital just by the spring at Nahal Refaim. And we think that Nahal Refaim, at this area of Walaje, Batir, and the Bible Zoo today, was all part of a kind of an estate belonging to the kinghood, to the palace. So it all goes together to kind of create a very political landscape and a very economic, efficient economic landscape of agriculture, of course, probably wine and so on, wine and olive oil, but wine, mainly wine.
We are talking about, if I'm not mistaken, structures that sort of like are all standing in a certain direction, going from the city, the core of the city at the Temple Mount, towards the periphery. Can we imagine that something like that has existed also in other directions and going in the
First of all,
surrounding?
well, I think what we learned is to be humble. Savage excavations teach us that you never know. It wasn't really expected. Until now, there were excavations conducted that when Ramot was built and Givat Safatit, the French Hill, and so on. And there were finds there. There are many, I'll call them farmsteads or isolated buildings that tells us that there is a very, very intensive agricultural exploitation of these areas. Some of them are very hard for agriculture, but they are still being exploited. But we don't see north of Jerusalem this kind of lavish and so on. These things are seen only from Jerusalem southward and southwestward into the Rephaim Valley. And Karem can be a place that one day something will pop out. It makes sense with all the springs there. I would be open for any more surprises like that.
So what are the sort of like plans for the future? What are the sites that are still being excavated, or in your opinion is important to continue to excavate, or other type of analysis? We know that nowadays there's a lot of microarchaeology, as you were mentioning, the study of pollens, but a lot of different things, like things can be done in the lab, even with artifacts found 100 years ago, and give us a lot of new answers. Can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yes, and I am as an excavator at the City of David, together with Iftach Shalev. We exposed a building that existed through that time frame. It got to the end. What we see there is 586 BCE, the Babylonian destruction. This is when the place was destroyed. It's harder for us to see the 60, 70 years earlier, because the destruction preserves the last moment. To find things that were not destroyed, it's sometimes very hard. But our thoughts are all the time about how can we, if there's such wealth outside of the city, it has to be expressed within the city itself. And we have to look for the elite and see whether there are differences between elite quarters and quarters that are less connected to these networks, these elite networks and so on. And our hope is that through the Givati excavations, through analyzing things that were found by Shiloh and so on, we'll be able to flesh out the power of these kings, because this is their capital city. Okay, we just talked about the outside, but now Givati parking excavation, the building that we found, is located, I don't know, 70 meters away from Temple Mount. So if there was a temple there and the palace was next to the temple, then we have to imagine that we are within an area that was occupied by the elite. And what we're doing is, for example, and this will also be presented at the conference, I forgot, in the last day of the last session of the conference, we did a residue analysis. Residue analysis is a method coming from chemistry that allows you to extract molecules that were observed into the clay. The clay is full of air within it, and when you hold especially liquids within the store jar, for example, they will observe into the clay. And the material itself will decay, it will disappear, but the molecules can survive. And the residue analysis is a method that extracts these molecules and try to identify them. And there are always surprises. And I'll stop with that. But if 20 or 30 years ago they're saying, oh, these are store jars probably meant for holding wine or olive oil, now we can test that positively and come up with results and so on. So this is one way. Zooarchaeology, we just a student of us just finished with CRH. She submitted, and she's now a doctor on the food habits of these elite quarters in Jerusalem. hopefully one day she'll be able to compare not just Jerusalem, but also the sites around. Is the wealth. She's seeing tons of fish bones coming into Jerusalem. Fish, of course, fish, not fish bones. She's seeing fish bones, but there are fishes being imported into Jerusalem from various places. And the question is whether this is elite food or does it filter all around? Everybody's eating fish. We'll be able to see that very soon, I hope.
Very, very interesting. Professor Gadot, thank you very much for being with us for our Zoom. Hag Sameach, and it looks like we're going to need to talk very soon again.
Thank you very much.